Hi everyone, and welcome back to Project No Buy. Today we're going to go through the May update and kind of go into a tangent based on the one thing that is on my list of things that I wanted. So let's get right into the metrics. In the month of May, I did purchase a few things. And once again, this is kind of arguable as far as whether it's allowable on a no-buy challenge. But as I've discussed previously, fairly recently on this channel, the long-term goal is to totally reshape my own shopping habits and not necessarily have a perfect no-buy year. Although I do think I'm going to tighten up the belts again for a real no-buy July, possibly June as well. There's no reason to restrict it just to 1 month, but I do think I will be tightening up the belts again for the remainder of the year. And, you know, maybe starting halfway through and doing like a 6-month no-buy for the end of 2025 is maybe going to help me reframe my habits as a whole. But anyway, putting that aside for a moment, getting into the things that were purchased in the month of May. So I do have the usual eating out purchases. And again, if I wanted to use my own point system, I could tally those up here. I have not really been holding on to that too tightly though. So again, it's kind of been more of a tool that I've used when contemplating each individual purchase, as far as the most important question being, is this a want or a need? So I will continue with that disclaimer, I guess, that the point system was more of a reference tool, or has been more of a reference tool going forward from when I made that video. So I have the meals out, the typical $19, 72 or 42 charges from the Poke Place, depending on, they sometimes add an automatic tip, so it just kind of depends on their system there. I made an order for Cocoa Floss, which is a specific type of dental floss. This was made after I had my routine hygiene, dental cleaning, and x-rays appointment, the checkup, I guess you could call it, dental checkup. And I talked to the hygienist about whether, I guess I'm having some bleeding in between the teeth and the gum line, and we were talking about which types of flosses, because I'm telling you, I do floss every single night. I take my dental hygiene very seriously. I've already had an unusual dental procedure. I vlogged it actually last year. And so I don't mess around, and we were talking about different types of floss that might help, that might be more effective, and she did recommend the Cocoa Floss that I had once before, but is really expensive. So my husband was kind of balking at repurchasing it. But when the dental hygienist also recommended it, coming from a dental professional that I was seeing in person, it was more of a justifiable repurchase. And, she was saying that she does notice that it gets more stuff out when flossing. And so that's, again, you do you, I'm going to do me. My actual personal dental professional recommended this to me. I'm not trying to sell it to you. I don't think it's necessary for most people. But it is interesting that despite flossing every night, I can still have kind of minor gum issues. And it could also be hormonal as well in my case, as that's kind of been a little bit of a roller coaster. Anyway, back to the matter at hand. The next thing that was purchased was actually, so this is the most debatable purchase of the month of May. And I gotta say, the company was the most annoying company ever. And that's the company from which I purchased my new iPad case. And the reason for this purchase was because I have started doing my pop arrangements, and I brought the first completed one, to my quartet, or what I hope is gonna be my regular quartet going forward next season. And so I was working on my music notation app with my Apple Pencil. And the case that I got before was one of those where the pencil just magnetizes on to the side. And so what would happen is the pencil would just fly off of the case sometimes, and then I wouldn't know exactly where it was. I would have to track it down, and I now am starting to use it very, very regularly for the music notation work. And so I was looking for a case where the pencil would slot in to the actual case itself, and therefore not be flying around. And as is typical with any purchases like this, I try to make them the last purchase. And it's really a shame that the first purchase didn't work out, that I got the wrong case the first time. I did have a recommendation from somebody, and so that's, they said they like the particular case that I got last time where the pencil magnetizes, and it worked well for them for whatever reason. And I just trusted their recommendation without really thinking about it too critically. And again, we're going to talk about that a lot in the month of June, because I finished reading the Martin Lindstrom books, Biology and brand washed. And that phenomenon where you have a recommendation from someone you know or somebody you respect or somebody you aspire to be like, even just a little bit, can basically make you shut your brain off. And again, I'm going to go really deep into that point later, so I'm going to put that aside for now. But basically, when I bought the first case for this iPad, I was not thinking critically about long-term use, obviously, and I probably could have just gone without a case at all until I knew what I needed. So lesson learned, mistakes made. I'm going to try to rehome that first case. But in the month of May, I did go ahead and purchase this one. And while I was at it, I did go ahead and get a replacement phone ring because okay, having small children, I do find it really helpful to be able to kind of hands-free hold my phone and not be worried about dropping it when I'm picking kids up and etc. And I had one of these for a long time, and then when the last adhesive kind of wore off, I just never replaced it. But I did get sucked in again by the add items up to the shipping threshold. And so I ended up with this case, this phone ring, and a pair of protectors for the headphones I have as well, the AirPod Max headphones. And once again, that was something that my friend who also has the AirPods, I tried before exchanging the headphones I got. I talked about this in January. She recommended that I get protectors for the ear cups because they can get scratched. And again, you know, that friend recommendation phenomenon, that add to the shipping threshold phenomenon conspired in purchasing not just the case, but these other two items. And I can't say that I regret it because they've been very functional items. They have fulfilled the purposes that I bought them for. And this particular iteration of this purchase was not impulsive at all. I took a couple of weeks to think about it. And I know I didn't discuss it on here, but I was also not making as many videos on here in general. And so I was discussing it with my husband, with my kids. Well, my kids actually helped me pick the color. I wasn't discussing whether I should make the purchase or not with them. I talked to a few other people about cases that they liked with the pencils being enclosed in there and tried to make the best decision I possibly could. Now, the company that I purchased these items from is super, super, super annoying. And I, after making the purchase or after starting to look into the company, saw some of their social media marketing, and it really, really turned me off. It was basically staged posts of people changing their phone cases, changing their iPad cases, changing their laptop cases, taking stickers on and off, matching their cases to their outfits, basically having drawers full of 50 phone cases and different iPad, you know, basically overconsumption galore. And when I placed the order, I got an email that was, again, extremely annoying. I don't know if I'll attach some of it here because, again, I don't want to promote this company at all. And I also feel like this video has already been kind of a showcase of shopping, and that is absolutely not what I'm trying to do here. So I don't know if I'm going to show the email. The gist of it, here we have the intro of the email here. Just when we thought our day was over, Emily came sprinting into the office, practically bursting with excitement. "It happened," she exclaimed. Only the fact that Alexa, yes, the Alexa, just placed an order with us. The energy in the building immediately skyrocketed. So like, oh yeah, I placed an order, we're celebrating. Like, what are we doing here? What a horrible company. Okay, they're probably not a horrible company. They just, the marketing might appeal to younger generations. I have no idea, or it doesn't appeal to me. So anyway, that was the most questionable thing or collection of things purchased in the month of May. I can't say that I have any regrets so far. Everything has been very functional, and my pencil is now secure. My phone is easier to hold with one hand or doing things with my hands, and my AirPods are now protected from scratches. So as far as that goes, all good news. I have a couple of parking fees for parking downtown. Again, one time to rehearse with my quartet. The first arrangement that I made that was of a pop song is of the song All Star by Smash Mouth, so that was kind of funny. If I can attach any of that recording, it was only an audio, so I don't know if I can insert it under here. I will do so, but again, it might get copyrighted, so we'll see. And that was super fun to do, and I look forward to doing more of that. I have another restaurant purchase, a plant purchase. This was split with my husband, and again, this is a little bit of a debatable household purchase rather than a no-buy purchase, but because I increased my budget, discretionary budget, to match my husband's, it has kind of shifted where we categorize some of our household expenses, I guess. So it's kind of a messy system, but there we go. I talked about that in an earlier video, how my personal spending budget was $200 a month to reflect my own salary and my own percentage of that I was willing to allocate to fund money. But there is a certain dynamic when you are married, I guess. You know, you do a lot of work around the household because you're not working full-time outside the home. Although I will have a full-time job in terms of a salary, my hours outside the home next season, if you didn't see my video about ambitions, I filled everybody in that I did get the full-time symphony job. So I will have a full-time job in terms of a salary next season, but I won't have full-time hours outside the home still. So I'll have more hours, but I won't have 40 hours a week. And so I will still do more of the household tasks. And there's just a certain kind of, I guess, resentment that can crop up when people have different standards of how they would like their house to be. And so long story short, I guess, my husband is a little bit more of a neat freak and a little bit more particular. You know, things have to be a certain way, and I'm really not. So I don't really care about that. I can let things, you know, not things that are gross. Like I never leave the dishes overnight or anything like that, but more kind of major things and or clutter. So I basically have to adapt to his preferences since he gets more stressed after 12-hour shifts at his job. And it does kind of breed a certain kind of resentment if the discretionary spending money is unequal. And so we now have equal spending money, but that means things like houseplants or things that are household expenses are kind of divided among our discretionary funds rather than allocated to a separate household account because the discretionary money is now higher, if that makes sense. It might not make sense, and we might change this later, but for now, that's just how the month of May went down. The last thing that was purchased, so there was another sandwich out and a last Etsy purchase for the frame testers for a particular brand of eyeglasses because I'm looking to replace one of my pairs of glasses for the summer. And again, this is one of those purchases that's debatable. It's kind of a want as well as a need because one of my current pairs of glasses just doesn't fit properly. The other pair, the purple pair, the large frames that I sometimes wear in videos, they don't have the sunglass attachment that the pair that doesn't fit great has. And so my aim is to get a pair that's more like the purple ones and also get the glasses attachment. And so that's the objective. I got the frames to test that. Those were like $3 off of Etsy. And I'm going to try to match the purple frames as closely as possible with the frame kit, you know, that you can just try on the glasses. I think I have them up there. I can go show you what they are. So this is what I'm talking about. These are just like little cardboard cutouts of these frames. And you just try them on and compare the ones that you think suit you the best. And then you can go ahead and make the right order rather than trying to guess or trying to use the virtual try-on tool, which is not the most helpful, and just guessing and possibly having to send them back. Especially when you're trying to order like the sunglass tops like I am. I find this a lot more helpful, just so I don't have to make multiple orders. So maybe even reviewing that footage will help me decide which of the glasses are best for me. All right, so that was my May total. So what was that? 4 meals out, 2 sets of parking, the cases for technology, the floss, and the glasses frames. So all in all, it wasn't too bad. And if we count the floss and these tech products as leaning towards more of a need than a want, then it's not actually breaking too many rules as far as the no-buy goes, even if it's not the most aesthetic way to approach a no-buy challenge. And we're still within the budget as well. I might not go as deep into specific nitty-gritty budget details now that my discretionary spending is going to equal my husband's, and I don't feel comfortable revealing all of the details of our household income online. But I am under budget. I am within budget. It's not an extreme jump from the $200, right? It's not like I'm going from $200 to $1,000 or to $800. You know, it's less than that. But still, you know, just some details are going to be kept more private. Sometimes I talk about things that I regret and or newly declutter. And I think I'm actually going to do a whole video on this later in June because I ordered a clear out kit from ThredUp, a secondhand clothing company, this video has been brand mentions galore. I know I had a phase where I wasn't mentioning brand names at all, but again, as we go through phases, as I've been going through phases publicly here, I am trying not to put undue emphasis on trying to avoid things at this point, now that I've kind of gone through the tunnel of darkness in relation to being influenced by brands, or kind of seeing the corruption that that can have, and coming out the other side feeling much more equipped to handle it, and also more equipped to explain and help and kind of rationalize for other people out there as well, as far as how we can avoid being influenced ourselves. And so it's not that I'm trying to expose you to brands, but I guess I'm trying to help you on the same journey that I've been on, if you're on it, and get to the point where it doesn't faze you either. And so you can let me know what you think about that in the comments below. But anyway, so I got the thread out cleanup kit. I'm going to send away anything that hasn't sold on the Mercari app, resell myself, and possibly put in a few extra things. I have to recheck if they take jewelry or not, but I want to do a more kind of cutthroat jewelry declutter. And by declutter, I might even store these things away, because again, there are people in my life who might eventually have pierced ears and want to go through some jewelry, but I don't need to keep them in my everyday jewelry box if I don't even use them or even want to use them. And so things like that, I might put more clothes away and have a more sparse setup in my closet. I'm going to go through The Conscious Closet, the book by Elizabeth L. Klein, and go through what she recommends to do there in terms of building a conscious closet, not by buying anything, but by curating what I currently have, and maybe trying to capsule down a little bit further. So that's another project for June. The results of this, or results of trying to compile what I'm going to put in the clean out kit, it hasn't arrived yet, so I haven't started, but I have recently realized that I do regret some of the clothing purchases that happened, like I said, even as recently as last year. And I think I'm going to save the details for that video in the future, but you know, there's the spoiler. There are things that I purchased last year that I already regret, and you live and you learn, I guess. The only way to not regret anything you buy is to just not buy anything. But sometimes in the moment, it's just really hard to wait it through, wait the urge out when you're riding that wave of desire for that new piece of clothing, especially in my case. Clothing is still the biggest weakness that I have. And so there's always further learning and growth that can happen. I also, in these videos, I tend to go through what I consumed and created. I haven't been keeping track of screen time at all. As far as books go, I think the only two that I finished were the two that I showed earlier, the Biology and Brand Washed. I am going to start No Logo next. And what else? I think I have the audiobook for Doppelganger, and they're both by Naomi Klein, both of those books. So the audiobook is on my Libby library app, so I'm going to start listening to that in my car commutes to work next week. Screen time I haven't really been keeping track of. I was doing a lot of kind of technology practice with drones and metronomes leading up to the audition for my job. And so that kind of threw my screen time totally out of whack. I was adding a couple of hours per day just using the metronome device to get the drones and the metronome. And so I didn't even look at that. And I am not going to in this month's update. I did not do any viola pop covers either because of the focus on the auditions. So I'm really looking forward to getting back to that. I have a long list of songs that I want to do next. And hopefully over the summer, I'll have some more time to do more than one session a month and get a good kind of backlog of recordings that I can then write down in music form and make real videos of to share on my other channel. That's the goal. So I might be spending a little bit less time here. I might keep to the current schedule of 2 videos a week so that I can allocate some more of my hours to writing down my music and hopefully recording the pop cover songs for my other channel. So stay tuned. We'll see if all of that unfolds this summer. Okay, now getting to the juicy part of the video, maybe the things that I wanted. And this is kind of comical. I'm almost embarrassed to tell you about it. In fact, I am embarrassed to tell you about it because it's ridiculous. It's playing right into the hands of capitalist consumerism, and I am only human. And sometimes I can't help it either. And I'll get to the point now that I've hyped it up unduly. But what I want, what I have started wanting with a huge passion is the Labubu. And yes, my exposure to this, my introduction to this, the Labubus, was the videos critiquing them as an example of consumerism or collecting gone out of hand. And before I say anything else, I'm not going to be buying a Labubu, okay? And, not least of which because they're always sold out. People want them right now. The demand is high. I am definitely going to wait a few months at the very least. And that's, this is maybe a kind of Christmas present consideration. Again, there are other people in my household who would probably get a kick out of these things too. Yes, I'm a child at heart. Interestingly enough, I was watching these kind of more conscious critical consumerism videos about the Labubus and how ridiculous they are, and learned about kind of where they came from and what they're about. Basically, they're these monsters inspired by Nordic mythology, and I actually have vivid memories as a child of these little Nordic monsters on postcards and other kind of books and stuff because my dad was into Norwegian fiddling. He still is, actually. He still does concerts on the Hardanger fiddle, which is very niche, but the monsters, the Labubus, being inspired by those Nordic kind of mythical creatures, really actually struck a chord with me and made me think of my dad and my childhood. And so it's like a perfect storm of justification, or, not to buy necessarily, not yet anyway, but to want these stupid little dolls that everybody also seems to want. And once again, after reading these books, I know I have firsthand experience now. I sit here wanting what everybody else wants. Again, referring back to that other book by Luke Burgess about wanting and how the mimetic desire, when you see something or see somebody have something, you want it. The way this book explains it is that your mirror neurons are firing because you want to be like what you see, and you can imagine yourself having what they have. And so you see this stuff, and especially if the person who has them is aspirational in any way to you, or you see them as cool, or you see them as celebrities, again, have this effect where they represent something positive to us, someone who's succeeded or is good at whatever it is, music, sports, whatever it might be, acting, it's famous even. And so we see that little piece of somebody aspirational having or doing something that we can also get for ourselves, and we just want it. There's also parts in the Brandwash book that talk about how humans make connections that aren't logical all the time. We make connections that lead us to a conclusion that's not really true. And we also kind of behave like a herd animal in terms of wanting to do what other people are doing and also being able to be led by people around us. And so if we see people talking about the Labubus, we see people wanting them, we see people unboxing them, we see people going crazy about them, one of our impulses can be to want them and to go do all the same things. And yes, it's not just the Labubus that this happens with, it's the Stanleys, it's the Trader Joe's tote bags, it's the whatever it might be, right? Like, I can't even name everything that's become a viral craze product in recent history. There's so many makeup products as well. I guess the unique thing about the Labubus is that they're blind boxes, so you don't always know what you're getting unless you get a full set in which you get all 6 of them. But most of the time, if you just get one, you don't know what you're getting. And there's also a secret one, so you never know if you're going to get the extra special one. And I'm not really into it for that, right? It's like, I am not interested in the least in getting a blind box. If I am going to get a Labubu in the future, it's going to be far enough down the road that they're available on their own website, the demand will have gone down, and I would just get a full set and, again, share them with other people in my household. So I would just be getting the full set of all 6. I wouldn't be mystery boxing it or whatever. It wouldn't be playing into the gambling aspect. And once again, I can admit that, at least today, it would be a very stupid thing for me to do to go pursuing the purchase of a Labubu. The name is funny as well. But I am discussing it with you here today, again, in the admission that I'm only human, and also in kind of the shared journey of this endeavor to not buy things, and not buy things you don't need. There's no universe where something like a Labubu is a need. There's no function that adds to my life. It's not even remotely justifiable like the technology purchases are in terms of not dropping my phone and not losing my pencil when I'm using it to work a lot these days. So there's no remote justification like these other things that were purchased in May. There's no remote justification, even like an article of clothing, which is luckily something I managed to avoid falling into in this month. But that is, again, another historical purchase point that I have a hard time resisting when there's something that I have decided that I want. And so, at least with the clothing purchase, you can delude yourself into thinking it's functional, which this is not to say that buying clothes for me right now is okay. It's absolutely not. It's still on my Project No Buy list of things that I must not buy because I have enough clothing. So it's not a need. So again, Labubu's not a need, but I'm not even saying, I definitely don't blame the conscious consumerism content creators for putting me onto these dolls, basically, because, it's not their fault that I want one. They were making content critical of them in terms of, this is why we don't need Labubus. This is why they're maybe problematic. This is why the behavior people exhibit around collecting Labubus is an issue. And again, I may or may not show you examples on the screen here because I don't want to influence you to want what I want. And I'm here telling you that I want this thing right now. And I am aware now, have a new awareness, that me even telling you that is somewhat influential in getting you to want that. And so I don't want that for you, right? And I am riding on the hope that very few people will have the same childhood connection to Nordic trolls as I do, and will be able to use that as a justification excuse like I did. And even that excuse is not even valid, because buying a Labubu is not going to make me closer to my dad. It's not going to give me that connection to Nordic music that I hope to eventually have. And once he's not able to play his Hardanger fiddle anymore, I would love to have it and love to carry on that tradition. And I can acknowledge that, right? I can acknowledge that the connection is not in the purchase of a Labubu. And, my dad wouldn't even know what that is, I think. And so the memory is in me, it's in my heart and my mind. It's not in the purchase of something that's trendy right now. And again, I think, on the surface of it, there's still an element of, if you have the money and you want it, why not buy it? Why not treat yourself? Why not? And again, this can be done in moderation. I know there are people out there even commenting on this channel that have those questions or believe, I guess, that we should be able to buy the things we want with our own money. And I want to continue moving in the direction of not having to buy everything we want, and that being something that I firmly embody as well as believe. And so being able to let go of things that I want is a skill that I want to develop, that I want to hone. And it's not that I'm never going to give in. And like I was saying, if I do end up getting a Labubu, it will probably be something along the lines of a Christmas present. Maybe not even this year if they're still as popular as they have been. I have no idea how long these trends last these days. But, and I guess maybe to my credit, but also just maybe it speaks to the specific types of items, I have never felt the pull to things like the Stanley Cup or the Trader Joe's tote bag. I guess that's not true, actually, because last year I do remember making a video of things I wanted to buy but didn't, and I think the Trader Joe's tote bag was actually in one of those, and I never got one. And so there is that, right? Like I can ride out the waves for some of the things that I wanted to buy but didn't. And so whether the Labubus make it onto the list of things that I actually do buy, or if they stay on that list of things I wanted to buy but didn't actually buy, remains to be seen. And I guess, like I've been saying, it depends on a multitude of factors, whether I think it's worth the money, the cost of the environment, the clutter in my home, what it brings to me, the joy it might bring to me and the others in my house who might like them. I guess all of these things are things that need to be weighed up. And while I do want to move in that direction of not buying everything we want, embodying that, enabling my kids to do the same, right? To not buy everything that they want, to feel like it's okay to want something and to wait, and then to eventually not buy it. I am not yet at the point where I don't want to do any material gifts at Christmas and birthdays for myself and my kids, my husband. And I guess it's like one of those moral questions, right? Like, is buying something you don't need a moral failing? And to what degree are we going to adhere to that value? And I guess what I'm learning about myself is that I am kind of a person who likes things in moderation. And even the things that are bad, I like to have the ability to indulge but not overindulge. And I like to have the control of my own desires to be able to say no and not be fighting a fight within myself. Maybe I'll share some other examples to kind of illustrate what I mean. there are substances, alcohol, other drugs, etc., that I don't typically partake in, but I would not consider myself somebody who's 100% sober. And, things like diet as well. I was 100% vegan for a number of years, and then that got a little bit relaxed in terms of adding eggs and some seafood. And now we're kind of back off of the seafood, but we're a little bit more relaxed in terms of some other animal products. My husband gets regular milk, and he's kind of gone back into the regular meat-based, or not meat-based, but like meat incorporating diet. And I am not fully on board there, but I'm also not completely 100% vegan anymore. And so I feel at peace, I guess, with where I'm at regarding that in terms of being able to make the better choice, but not be 100% abstinent or 100%, I said ascetic earlier, but that's kind of what I mean, right? Like I'm not a stoic about it, I guess. And so that's where I want to get with wanting things and buying things. And for me, I do feel like the journey is more psychological and emotional than it is financial or practical. And there are numerous reasons for this. I have always been a budgeter, and I've always been scared of debt. And I also have the privilege of living in a house, like a standalone house. So we don't have as many space constrictions. So it's not necessarily about the clutter or the money, but it's much more now at my stage of life now. It's not always been like this. I've always been open about that on this channel. I have not always had the financial or space privileges that I have now. And there were times that I just didn't have the money to buy extra things. But those were also not the years that I fell into shopping more than I wanted to. So anyway, back to the present. It's not so much an issue of money or space or anything practical, but it is an issue of making my actions line up with my values and kind of being what I want to see in the world and trying to, I guess, show others that there's a way to consume responsibly and something to aspire to. If I'm going to be any influence on these platforms on which I share content, I would like that to be an influence of something someone can aspire to that's not only reasonable, not only attainable, but also if they want to emulate it. I guess, similar to how we look up to celebrities who have certain things and even have certain habits, do certain things. I guess if I am an influencer in that regard at all, I would like it to be positive in terms of thinking critically about consumerism and finding the right balance, the healthy balance that helps us line up with our values and also maybe nudges us into the path of values that are better for humankind. So not polluting the environment and not, back to the Labubus, if I end up buying Labubus, I want it to be something that I use for the rest of my life in terms of they're something you hang on your bags, things like that. So it would be something that I use, have around, enjoy for the rest of the time that they can last, if it's not my whole life, right? So the intention would not be to have them for a year or two and then discard them. I would have to like them enough and want to have them, want to use them, expect that they would look just as chic on my purse when I'm 70 years old. And, where I'm sitting right now, I do think that is possible and that it can kind of be a pleasant reminder both of my dad and the Norwegian music, as well as this journey of not buying things and examining deeply this relationship with trendy items and conscious consumerism, and I guess reflecting on all of it critically. Now, again, this is right now where I'm sitting today. This is a slippery slope of justification. And so there is still that mandatory time, the holding period, where I will absolutely not be buying a Labubu. I will not be going onto the websites. I will not be trying to get one. And that's, I guess, going to be a part of the cycle of buying anything in my present and the future. And so there we are. That's what I want. And that's what I wanted in the month of May. We'll see how that develops going forward. And we'll see if I can practice this muscle of waiting and not giving into the things that I want to buy right away. And it is interesting to see how the journey kind of develops in itself when the motivations change a little bit. And I guess we're not in a position where we don't have to think about money at all. But thinking back to the times where I was making $9 an hour and trying to work 30 hours a week just to pay for rent and groceries and bills and etc., there was not much left over at all. And how I just couldn't even contemplate, back in those days, if I had an iPad and a pencil and the pencil was flying off the case, I probably wouldn't have been able to afford the new iPad case. And it definitely signifies that this is a want and not a need. And I think there's a lot of reasons we can justify things. And one of those reasons is enabling yourself to do something more conveniently, enabling yourself to make more money. I could argue that by doing my arrangements and doing my pop covers, it'll eventually allow me to do that in public and make some money. And therefore, this iPad case purchase, I think it was like $60 or $70. Like, these things are not cheap. They're kind of ridiculously expensive from this brand. It's definitely not something that I could have afforded even a few years ago easily. And even now, we should still be focused probably more on paying off the car we bought this year and building up our emergency fund to the full 6 months, even if we're almost there. And so the journey changes, the justifications change, the narratives we tell ourselves change. It just kind of feels like there's no one right answer, no one right way of doing things. But hopefully we're all just out here doing the best we can. Hopefully we all have good motivations. Like I was saying in the video about ambition, I still want to believe that humans are good inside and that we have good goals and want to help each other, and that we're not trying to step on each other in terms of influencing negatively, encouraging people to buy things they don't need, and kind of selling out in a way. I still solemnly swear to never do that on this channel as far as taking paid advertisements or sponsorships. That is not going to be an interest of mine, never going to be an interest over here. I already feel kind of bad enough about being an unintentional influence whenever I mention a brand of a product, or that I wanted or bought something in the previous month of what was supposed to be a no-buy year. And so it's all just about finding that balance, isn't it? Anyway, I would love to hear about your successes and failures or anything in between in the month of May. I hope you are all doing well, and I hope you are all in good health and good spirits, or at least reasonable health and reasonable spirits, and that you have some excitement about your future and some healthy ambitions in your life. Yeah, again, I keep referring to that video. You can go watch it if you want to. But with that, I will say bye for now and see you in the next one.